Hello everyone, my name is Joshua. This is the 78th video of my video journal series. Today's date is Monday, the 27th of April, 2026. How's everyone been? I've been pretty good, thank you. And sorry about the lighting situation in my last couple of videos. Just due to the camera I'm using to record this, my Samsung Galaxy A04s. It's not the most expensive thing out there. It's not the greatest thing to record videos on, but it does the job. But sometimes when I set the lighting before I record, it can either like turn out really good or it can turn out pretty bad. I've had some entries in the past really turn out like, you know, crummy, and I'm pretty sure one entry I had was like really washed out, even though I didn't intend to make it washed out. It was just how it turned out. Um, and sometimes it's like really dark. When I move, it gets like darker, and then when I move to this position, it gets like lighter. So yeah, hopefully I can maybe like change the camera that I'm using. I can most probably bust out my Canon R50, but that takes more time. And I feel like these videos, they have like a nice, I guess, um, vintage feel to them. Maybe I should start filming it in like a 4:3 aspect ratio. Who knows? Just to add the retro vibes of something you'll see from, I guess, the late 2000s or early 2010s. Um, I'm always open. I'm always open to suggestions. Sorry about my stuttering. It's just haven't been drinking too much water. I should drink more water. Figaro. There we are. I can I can now speak properly as long as I Figaro. I'm definitely not an opera singer. That's just a horrible, horrible impression. But yeah, something I wanted to talk about today is high speed rail. Now I know I made a couple of video entries about high speed, about just trains in general, but I want to be focusing upon high speed rail here in Australia because high speed rail here in Australia has been debated since the 1980s. We've, discussed a lot about it. We've made all these proposals, commitments, but we've never actually even developed a single, uh, solid or feasible proposal that's actually gone beyond the planning stage, and no sections of high speed rail track exists within Australia today. The fastest train in Australia was the Queensland Electric Tilt Train, which went 200 kilometers an hour. So no train in Australia has ever gone beyond 200 kilometers an hour. And that record was set in like the 90s, I'm pretty sure. So quite a long time. Um, and nowadays, like the government has the High Speed Rail Authority. So they're currently developing plans to develop a high speed rail line between Sydney and Newcastle by the year 2039. Obviously, I am excited about this proposal, which I guess one thing to set it out from all the other proposals is that, well, um, it actually seems to have gone a little bit into the planning stage and development stage. And obviously, there's been like countless high speed proposals throughout Australian history, Sydney to Brisbane or Melbourne to Brisbane. But this Sydney to Newcastle one, I'm actually quite optimistic about it. Obviously, 2039, who knows? Maybe that date gets delayed. Um, Maybe, there's slight changes in the plans. Maybe it just gets scrapped entirely. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully I don't jinx myself. But you know, I guess I won't really be impressed until um, the I guess line opens. So and it's always I guess bound whenever there's a government project or anything for it to always be delayed, like the Bankstown metro line opening. It was supposed to open the metro line from Sydney to Bankstown. I'm pretty sure like 1 or 2 years ago, but then they just delayed it. So who knows? Um, and the state already has like a lot of, I guess, infrastructure projects going on, especially in regards to public transport, like Sydney Metro West. Sydney Airport, which is, I know, pretty much complete, but they want to expand the airport in the future. You also got the Metro West line. So the Metro West line, yes, and the Western Sydney Airport shuttle, which will run from St Mary's to I'm pretty sure Luddenham or Western Sydney International Airport. So yeah, you got a lot of infrastructure projects just around Sydney alone. But high speed rail, obviously it's a Commonwealth thing, but it's obviously going to link Sydney and Newcastle, two of the most populous cities within the state, and obviously there's plans for it to, I guess, extend to Brisbane one day and then one way to Canberra and to Melbourne. But I would really love to see Sydney and Newcastle high speed rail, and obviously high speed rail to Melbourne. They say they can get it to around 4 hours Sydney to Melbourne high speed rail, which is just phenomenal. Come to think about it, if you fly, all right, it's like maybe like a half hour, 45-minute flight, but you got to arrive at the airport 2 hours early. So that's 2 hours and 30 minutes already, plus the commute it takes to get to Sydney Airport and the commute it takes if you arrive at Melbourne Airport to get like a taxi or cab or bus into the city proper. That usually just takes around 4 hours in of itself. But with high speed rail, not only would it be cheaper, because obviously it's going to be owned by the government, but it will hopefully drop you off in Flinders Street or Southern Cross Station, which is right in the heart of the Melbourne CBD, or even Sydney Central, which is close to the city and doesn't have a station access fees or anything like that, because here in Sydney, international and domestic airport stations, currently as of filming this in 2026, have a station access fee of $20, which is kind of stupid, but they're going to scrap that fee in around 2030. So obviously, I'm really excited about high speed rail, but yet again, though, I don't want to get my hopes up too high because, I'm always, I guess, a little bit pessimistic about government projects arriving on time. But I like to see, Sydney to Canberra as well, high speed rail. Um, Even that will just like improve the existing, I guess, track along that route, or maybe put just higher speed trains between Sydney and Canberra. Obviously, high speed rail, but just these small improvements can really benefit because it really takes Sydney to Canberra like 3.5 hours by train, which is just atrocious. They can easily get that one down in terms of travel time if they just like straighten up some segments of track, or maybe not even get newer trains. The XBTs can go like pretty fast, like up to 200 kilometers an hour. Um, Maybe just yeah, I'll recommend just straightening up track. Because most of the existing regional track, not just along the Sydney to Canberra route, but some portions of Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Brisbane, they just like very windy because they follow the steam era routes when technology was a lot more limited, and obviously they couldn't like build as many tunnels as we could now. Yeah, so I guess um, that's just my little take on it, but I'd really like to just see high speed rail within Australia. And something that I guess, got me thinking is that I've been talking to a lot of old people, some people who have taken not a train but a tram along the harbour bridge, which you can only do from around the harbour bridge's opening in it's retesting my history knowledge, 1930 to 1958. Correct me if I got that wrong. Um, but yeah, so you used to be able to take a tram along the Harbour Bridge when Sydney had its original tram or streetcar network. I've spoken to some old people who have said, "Oh, I remember catching a tram along the Harbour Bridge, the North Shore Line." Um, which I just thought was so amazing, being able to go on a small little tram along one of the most famous bridges in the world. But they, you know, I guess they were talking about high speed rail with me, and they say, you know what, we won't see high speed rail within our lifetimes, and that just got me like really thinking, like, wow, that is like a very bleak thing to, I guess, imagine. Like bleak, as in, obviously they're in like the early 80s, um, but there are a lot of old people, most probably watching this video, or people that I've spoken to about, I guess, transport and their experiences with um, trams in Sydney and trains and buses and all that, who are never, unfortunately, we will never get to experience high speed rail within Australia if this current proposal goes ahead and it opens in 2039. Um, some people who have, I guess, followed news of high speed rail in Australia since the 1980s, but obviously they've grown old and, they might not ever be able to see that come to fruition, which I guess just shows you how long, it's been since the 80s, like 40 plus years, but, how long we've really debated about high speed rail, but we haven't got anything off the ground. So yeah, it was just a really weird thought, and obviously I'm like 20 years old, so I still got a lot of years left to see out high speed rail, but I'll be pretty old. Like, by the time there's a high speed rail line between Brisbane uh, to Sydney to Canberra to Melbourne along that route, I'll most likely be in my 50s or 60s, because they said, oh, it could take decades, to just complete that route alone. Um, yeah, I'll most likely be like nearing retirement age before it gets done, if it ever gets done, which is a bleak thing to, I guess, think about. But I guess just that's just how, I guess, long high speed rail takes to develop. The Japanese took a while to develop their high speed rail network. Um, you know, but they worked on it. They kept on adding new lines whenever they could, extending previous lines, and they've been doing it since like the 60s. So they've had 60 years to develop their high speed rail network. Australia had 40 years, and we haven't even developed a single stretch of track. Which is just astonishing. And I guess, like, obviously, you can argue Australia's a smaller country. We got uh, less people, so obviously less people to work on these projects. But I think, the Japanese, they don't exactly have flat terrain. In fact, most of Japan is quite mountainous. Here in Australia, we're the flattest continent on Earth. You can't tell me you can't just shove a bunch of train tracks on the ground and call it a day in just a straight line. How easy would it just to be if you had like a train line that just goes from Perth in a straight line, taking only a small gradual bends just to get it to somewhere like Adelaide, which is also relatively flat. But yet again, I guess supply and demand, Perth to Adelaide is quite a sizable distance, not many people, and, you know, might be conventional to, I guess, fly, but, I guess Sydney along the east coast of Australia is a lot more mountainous and all that. You got to build a lot more tunnels. But 40 years and we couldn't even get a start on that. Come on. Even now, you could just like improve the existing City to Melbourne corridor, which will shave like hours in of itself. If the XPTs can go full speed, but the government caps them to 160 kilometers per hour. But yeah, so you know, maybe in my lifetime I'll see a national high speed rail network where you can take a train from Sydney to Perth or Sydney to Darwin. Um, yeah, and maybe I'll be able to see like, um, you know, really just like a national, I guess, rail um, operator in Australia. There used to be a national rail operator in Australia, but then it all got privatized and everything like that because Whitlam tried to establish it. But I think it was John Howard or Paul Keating that privatized it. Something akin to like, um, Amtrak in the US, where we just have like a single rail national operator. And even with high speed rail, I just want to see better, um, better rail access to Australia's like remote communities like Bathurst, Orange. I mean, I'm just naming the ones in New South Wales, but we should have like pretty good regional rail services. If I want to go to like a town like Griffith, for example, um, or like Bathurst, Orange, Lismore, return trains back to Lismore, Casino, um, you know, just any like I guess regional town, not just New South Wales, but around Australia. Um, we need to I guess electrify more of our regional lines and really have like a competitive regional rail service. Something akin to I guess a country like Japan or France or the UK, but with like the identity of Amtrak in the US. Not exactly like Amtrak, but like where we just have like a national rail operator like Amtrak essentially. Um, at least just for like interstate services. Obviously, like getting on a train in New South Wales, like regional services, for instance, most probably will be still New South Wales government. If you want to go on a regional train in South Australia, then it will be South Australian government. But I'm just saying, there needs to be like a stronger national rail identity here in Australia because, yeah, our regional rails are also pretty lacking. If you want to go to a regional town, no one says, "Oh, let's catch the train." You know, trains are very popular, I guess, in the cities and all that, like suburban services, but no one says to catch a train if you want to go to Canberra, um, you know, or catch a train if you want to go to like another regional town, like, um, you know, just any regional town, like if you want to go to Grafton or Griffith or, um, you know, Bathurst or um, any of those, like I guess towns where they only get like maybe one train a day per most. But that's pretty alright. I know um, some of those towns I mentioned, which may or may not have train stations, they like I know. Yeah, Bathurst receives like a couple of trains a day. I don't know about Griffith though. Um, hmm. And I guess just trying to remember. I guess even Broken Hill receives like at least one train a week, maybe a couple of trains a week, and that's all the way out there. Um, yeah, and I guess to conclude this video, um, not only do we need national high speed rail within Australia, but we also need national, I guess, rail identity here in Australia. Like, um, just a national rail operator. Um, and we need to fix our regional trains. Um, trains should be a solid substitute to the car, essentially. You should be able to get anywhere via public transport in a reasonable time for a reasonable cost than a car. And I'm excited to see, I guess, high speed rail, um, along the east coast of Australia, maybe around the entirety of Australia. Who knows? Not in like in the exact perimeter, but where we just have a high speed rail system connecting all the major capital cities and towns together. Um, and obviously, it's going to take a long time to develop. City of Newcastle, what's now, 2026. It'll be 13 years to develop, hopefully, that line. But, Sydney to Melbourne will be decades, I reckon, before we see a high speed rail line. Could take, until I'm in my 50s or 60s, maybe around retirement age. And who knows, maybe I'll make like a follow up video in that time, 50 years to go, counting from this day, where um, hopefully I'll be recording on a high speed rail train. Saying, I remember 50 years ago, this isn't my real voice, but I'm just doing exaggeration. When I said it'll take 50 years to ride high-speed rail, and here I am catching a high-speed train to Melbourne, uh, and I'll see you guys in 3 hours' time, sort of thing. Like, it would just be amazing. But um, yeah, I'm not gonna get yet again. I'm not gonna get my hopes up too high unless I've seen some development and when the line eventually opens. Um, yeah, and I guess sorry about my son. I'm just trying to think of more things to say, but it's a Monday night, so who cares? Um, and yeah, I've definitely been on high speed trains before. I've been off them in Japan, and they're fantastic. And I really wish we could have that like Shinkansen technology here. Just get those Shinkansen trains and just put them on our tracks. Like that'll just be awesome. And the Shinkansen, just on a side note, the Shinkansen seats very much remind me of the D-set seats. The D-sets, the Marion trains. Those seats, like, remind me nearly one-to-one of the Shinkansen. I remember when I sat down in those D-set seats for the first time, I was like, wow, this really feels like I'm in Japan all over again. And those D-set seats are comfy, the Marion's. I thought they were going to be really uncomfy because I was used to like the V-set seats, which were like the comfiest in my opinion. But the one thing about the V-set seats was that it didn't have like a headrest. So whenever I wanted to like go to sleep, I just had to like lean on the window. But the Marion's, I swear, I nearly fell asleep on one of the Marion's, which you should not fall asleep on a train, on a public train. But yeah, I was just like, oh my lord, this is like a lot more comfier than I expected. And I was literally about to like nearly fall asleep on it. So yeah. Point one to the Marion's. I did not know the D-set trains were actually going to be that comfy. And they just reminded me of the Shinkansen. But anyway, yeah. And I've seen like videos posted by the High Speed Rail Authority um, here on YouTube, which is the government, I guess, board or advisory board or whatever you like to call it for high speed rail in Australia. And it seems promising. Like I said, Sydney to Melbourne 4 hours, Sydney to Newcastle 1 hour, Sydney to Brisbane 4 hours. Phenomenal stuff. But I guess that's if the project goes ahead, and that's if the government keeps on its promise. Because every government, ever since I'm pretty sure the Hawke Labour government has like basically talked about proposing or implementing high speed rail in Australia. Hawke, Keating, Howard, Rudd, etc. Have apparently all debated about it, but they haven't really got a start on it, if you ask me. But yet again, though, if you look at a country like Japan, for instance, they're currently developing a maglev network, which is set to high-speed rail. Maglev is basically like levitating trains, sort of. Very advanced stuff that I don't even know too much about. Obviously, I know like a rough idea of what like maglev is. It's just basically like super fast rail, like an evolved version of high-speed rail. And Japan's currently developing their maglev line. I forgot what it was, the specific line they're developing, but I know it's been under construction for like a decade, and they're still working on it. And that goes for like other countries like China. I'm pretty sure they're developing their maglev line, or maybe they've got like an operational one, maybe like a short test track. I know in Japan they got like a short test track of maglev trains, which can go up to like 400 or 500 kilometers an hour, something ridiculous like that. And yeah, I guess like maglev is like a relatively new technology. Relatively new. Technically, high-speed rail's been around since, I guess you could argue, the Flying Scotsman, because I guess the old definition of high-speed rail or higher speed rail was 200 kilometers an hour, and the Flying Scotsman, was able to achieve that. And I've actually talked to someone who's been on the Flying Scotsman, weird enough. Yeah, it's weird though when you just like talk to someone, oh yeah, I've been on the Flying Scotsman once. And I was like, wasn't that like the 1920s or something like that, or 1940s? But I think that thing was in service until the 60s or 70s. I'm not an expert on the Flying Scotsman. Um, but yeah, what else? Oh man, I've been talking a lot, have I? Um, yeah, so I guess yeah, maglev. Obviously, will we ever see maglev here in Australia? Most probably not with my lifetime. It'll be a while before we can get high speed rail, let alone maglev. But how crazy would maglev be? You know, sitting in Melbourne maglev. Um, you get to like Sydney to Melbourne is around 800 or 900 kilometers an hour or something. Uh, 900 kilometers, sorry. Let's say Sydney and Melbourne is at most 1,000 kilometers apart, which isn't the case. It's more like 800 or 900 kilometers apart. But if you on a maglev train that goes 500 kilometers an hour, then that means you can arrive Sydney and Melbourne 2 hours. I'm pretty sure if I do the math right, around 2 hours, which is just like insane. You know, why are we developing high speed rail? We should just be developing maglev, which will be very very expensive, and I don't think any country has like a national maglev network right now. But why don't we do that? Just skip the whole high speed rail and just put levitating trains on there. You know, nothing can go wrong. I mean, um, it'll cost billions and billions of dollars. And I guess no country's fully implemented yet, but why can't Australia be a world leader in rail again? Um, but anyhow, I guess 4 hours between Sydney and Melbourne is like pretty astonishing in of itself. So yeah, I guess that's my opinions on high speed rail. Um, it would be cool if you can hop on a train from Sydney to Melbourne just to watch like a football game, or even just to go to work. That would be very interesting to think about if you can just fly between maybe train travel 4 hours. It's on the verge of it. But theoretically, you can commute to Melbourne if you live in Sydney for work um, within the same day. Which I just think is pretty cool. And I guess, obviously, since high speed rail is going to be owned by the government, which will mean cheaper fares, which means it'll make it more competitive to air travel. Um, I think they said they were going to like make. I don't think they have confirmed about the ticket costs, but excuse me, yawning. But I think it's not going to be that more expensive than I guess like a typical city train ticket, or a regional ticket, for instance. Obviously, they're going to make it affordable. I think it was like Sydney Newcastle, 30 or 40 bucks or something like that. But obviously, prices are subject to change, and hopefully, maybe one day it'll be integrated in the Opal network or something like that. Um, but yeah, I don't care how much it costs. I will definitely try and be one of the first people on that high speed rail line if I can. And um, yeah, I guess you know, yet again, it's nice to see our country take high speed rail somewhat seriously now. But I definitely want to see improvement by the federal government implement it. Um, and I guess I'll see you all in the year 2039, which, mind you, I end this series in the year 2046. So, yeah, it'll still be, hopefully, when this series is still continuing, high speed rail would be a thing. And yeah, I guess that's just my thought about it. But anyway, I guess I'll catch you all later. And before I quit, before I end today's video, I guess I'll leave you with like a small message of wisdom, and that is, oh man, what should I make it? What should I make today? Small little quote. I guess it is to be patient. Much like me waiting for high speed rail, patience is, I believe, one of the like golden keys in life. You know, being patient can help you unlock so many doors and present you with new pathways and opportunities. You might not be able to, I guess, get what you want or be able to achieve your goals at the exact time that you want it, but that's where patience comes in. Um, I have to be very patient when I'm waiting for, I guess, a family member to get ready. And I'm all fully dressed. I got everything I need to go, but I got to learn patience. Got to wait for them to finish what they have to do so we can be on our way. Um, you know, I guess when you're waiting, excuse me, I'm gonna be patient to go to bed. I guess when you're waiting for like a food pickup or delivery or something like that, if you go to a fast food restaurant, you got to be patient. Even though it's fast food, you got to be patient because might be a lot of orders out there. Might be a slow um, process because uh, it's like middle of peak hour, so yeah, you gotta be patient. And with patience, comes reward. You know, um, you eventually get the reward, but you also get rewarded for your patience, essentially. By waiting there whilst maintaining respect and obviously respect for other people and yourself. You earn basically two rewards with patience: the actual reward, the reward that you set out to get, and also the reward in yourself, essentially. Um, you know, Basically the reward for maintaining respect and calmness. So yeah, patience. Yeah, it's a very big thing in life. Obviously, I would consider myself to be a patient person, but sometimes I get a little bit impatient with things. But that's when you need to take a step back and take things slow. Because something I've learned throughout this series is that time is a very weird concept, and being patient can sort of help you deal with time. But who knows how fast the series will go? Um, who knows how fast, I guess, my patience will go if I'm like waiting at a McDonald's. I'm like, oh, where's my Big Mac? But anyway, patience is one of the golden keys to life, up there with like diligence and hard work and honesty. But anyway, I guess I'll catch you all later and see you all next time. Bye. See you. Take care.